Our next speaker hails from New Zealand. He has not just been a supporter but also an activist for socialist republicanism for most of his life. He's been involved in many political campaigns and still very active on international solidarity, particularly with the issue of Palestine and support for the PLP. Would you please give a warm welcome for Phil Ferguson?
Owen asked me to say a few words, partly about my own political activity and also how I see things in Ireland at present. I've been involved in left-wing political activity since I was about 14, when I joined a group called CUS, the Canterbury Union for Secondary Students, which used to try to organise high school students to go on strike and protest and so on for their rights. In 1986, I'd been living in Britain in the early 1980s. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not Irish, I am actually a New Zealander. But I came to Ireland in 1986, specifically to join Sinn Féin, and I was involved in Sinn Féin until the beginning of 1994. Primarily, I was very active in the Liberties area of Sinn Féin and local Republican work, selling fob-locks, doing collections and doing political organising. One of the better things that we did that was kind of the brainchild of Rose Dugdale was a thing called Communities Against Poverty. We organised an occupation of the Mansion House by women and children when little Haughey, Sean Haughey, was the Lord Mayor. We had intended to have an offal party on the front lawn of Gemma Hussey's house, who was the Fine Gael Minister of Social Welfare at the time. And I guess it was a sign of the way things were already going in Sinn Féin in the late 80s, early 90s, that the offal party on Gemma Hussey's front lawn didn't take place. And certainly by the early 90s, well, the other thing that I was involved in, and for the last few years particularly involved in, I worked full-time for the anti-extradition campaign, operating out of a little office around the basement office around the corner in Mountjoy Square. But it was already starting to become obvious in the early 1990s, and especially in 1993 with the Downing Street Agreement, where things were going. I remember a conference where Jim Monaghan had presented a paper called Republicanising the Social and Economic Struggle, and it was basically talking about the Connolly approach for the late 20th century, early 21st century, and counterposed to that was a document by Tom Hartley, which was arguing for a pan-nationalist approach. Now, I knew a lot about Irish history. I've been interested in Ireland since even before I was 14, and I knew what pan-nationalism meant. So for me, that was a sign that things were going in a different direction to the movement that I thought I had joined when I came here in 1986. So I was partly, although from New Zealand, I partly underwent the ultimate Irish experience, which was being forced out of the country by unemployment and poverty. So I underwent the ultimate Irish experience of forced immigration. But it was, along with that, was also the fact that politically the movement was going in a different, the destination was a different to the train that I had hopped on in 1986. Now, when I left Ireland in 1994 and I returned to New Zealand, my view of things was that, oh well, okay, that's finished, and it'll be another generation, it'll be another 25 years, and the struggle will regenerate. So I was absolutely delighted to see the formation of Éirígí a couple of years ago, and the fact that here finally was a Republican organisation that was clearly Republican. It wasn't gas and water socialism like the various other groups on the Irish left, but it was very much a socialist Republican organisation, and it wasn't scared to talk about class, it wasn't scared to talk about capitalism, it wasn't scared to talk about James Connolly and the idea of developing a Connolly type perspective for the 21st century. And in the time, I haven't been here since 1994, by the way, but coming back 17, it's almost 18 years later, what I see is what I see outside of this room is not particularly encouraging with what's happening around the EU, the financial collapse and so on. But what I see in terms of like a rebuilding, a recreation of socialist republicanism is actually very, very encouraging, and I'm very happy to be at the Ard Fheis and to offer to do whatever I can in terms of promoting Éirígí in New Zealand and Australia. I have a little blog called The Irish Revolution, which some of you may have seen. It mainly deals with the 1900 to 1930 period. There's lots of stuff there about the Republican working class and women's movements at the time and their particular struggles. But there's lots of stuff as well that I just put up from the Éirígí website, videos and articles from the website as well. And so just to finish off, I'd just say again how delighted and how pleased and how wonderful it is to see the kind of regeneration of socialist republicanism that I certainly didn't expect to see happen for quite some time yet. So, Guruma Mai